Hi, thanks for joining me. My name's Josh Leonard, and along with Thomas Harper, we oversee the work study program here at UNC. Today I'm going to be talking about the third in our three-part video series regarding the annual overview and updates of the federal work study program, which we presented live back in May 2018. Now, this part of the series is going to be about updates, those that happened last year and weren't utilized fully, the ones that we're bringing in for 18-19, and one very large one that really isn't going to roll out for most supervisors until 19-20. As you can see from the listed updates on this page, we've done quite a bit over the past year, and we're going to be doing more in the future. But I wanted to review just a few items before we move on to the big news. So the information on this slide's in two groups. The first one on the left is things that we updated in 17-18 that supervisors didn't fully take advantage of or may not have realized happened. And the ones on the right are new things for 18-19 that we'd like to make you aware of. These are all independent of the big new program initiatives we covered in part 2 of this series. These are actual programmatic updates, either concerning regulations or in most cases the software system. So missed in 17-18. First item on that list is the supervisor resources webpage. Prior to when I came on board in spring 2017, we didn't really do a ton of training. We mostly allowed supervisors to sort of figure out the program themselves and provided some PDFs on the topics. So we made a move to try and be more interactive, more proactive, more communicative with our training efforts. And a lot of our trainings and resources needed a home so that people could access them on demand. So we created a supervisor resources webpage in JobX. Most of you got to that link or the link for this presentation from that page. But if you need help finding it, if you just Google UNC Work Study and click on the link in the middle of the page for supervisors, it will take you right to our supervisor resources webpage. Second, when the 17-18 JobX job updates rolled out, there was a special little gift in there that we requested, which is an on-demand award and earning information. This means that supervisors at any point can log into JobX, pull up their student's information, and see exactly what that student's work study award is and how much of it that student has earned. You can check this out simply by going in and viewing the application and clicking on the student's name. If you need help on determining exactly how to do that, we do have a training posted on our supervisor resources webpage. More motivation to go there. And you'll also be able to see it as you move through the process, see the information for the student award earnings as you move through the process of reviewing applications and hiring. Two quick things. Number one, please don't ever move your job into storage. That removes the application from your ability to view it, which means you no longer have access to this information on demand, although you can always simply ask your student to log into JobX and view the information by going through their profile. Second, the information in JobX is not real time, unfortunately. We talked about a lot in the first part of this series about how student work has to go through HR approval in TIM and then pay out before it gets to reconciliation with my program before I can put that information into the JobX system. So about midway through the year, we had supervisors asking, can we be either more timely or more clear on what the as of date is for this information, and unfortunately we can't get more timely without completely redoing the university's TIM system, but we did start putting in an as of date so that when supervisors go to view this information on demand, if they go through the supervisor resources webpage, they can also see when that information was updated. This wasn't a super common one, but it was really helpful to some supervisors, so I wanted to mention it here. If your department has undergone a name change, you are not necessarily stuck with that old department name in JobX. If you'll let Thomas or I know, again, just email work-study@unc.edu that your department has had a name change, we can update the name that displays for you on JobX. So if you are no longer summer orientation, your new student family programs, we can certainly make that switch over. It's not hard for us and we're happy to do it. There's also a series of fields that were rolled out for 17-18 in the spring that allow supervisors to provide students information about day-specific employment. So there's one for each day of the week, Sunday through Saturday, and it provides an opportunity for you to put 256 alphanumeric characters. So if you wanted to put the exact hours you're open, 8 to 5, 9 to 6, or more information about each day, for example, we need students Monday afternoons from 2 to 5, it's a great opportunity to do that in JobX. Finally, in the MIST 17-18, we do offer a spring version of the work study program. So if you miss out on creating a position for the fall, you miss training or something happens, you didn't realize the program was available, and you really want to get into the program, we do have a spring process that opens towards the beginning of November and runs through the end of February, where you can post new jobs and student can search for spring-only positions. This is also an option for supervisors who hire a student for a full academic year, so a fall spring position, but it becomes very clear at the end of the fall term that that student has capacity beyond what they were hired for and really would do better in a newer, bigger, more difficult position potentially. We can create a new spring job and the student can be removed at the end of the fall from the fall position and move straight into the position for spring. Moving on to the right side of the page here, new things for 18-19, and we will discuss all of these in more detail through the FWS Primer series, so no need to go digging around looking for that information. Again, it should have been in the links right below where you found the link to this video. The first one is we've instituted a purpose-built search function, and the reason there is a pound symbol or hashtag in front of that is this system is going to use the Twitter method. You put keywords from your posting in, put a hashtag in front of it, make sure there's no space in between the word or words that follow it, those keywords. So hashtag keyword, and students will be able to search for exactly that. This is to eliminate a problem we saw in previous years where students were searching for a keyword that really didn't turn out to be a keyword. For example, we had, not a real case, but for an example, if your last name was biology and you worked in the communications department, you might have seen a lot of applications for students who are interested in jobs related to biology simply because your name came up when they searched for the keyword biology. No longer. You put the hashtag to define the keywords in a special field and you'll be doing great. The second one is the skill and learning outcome field. We addressed this in the previous video talking about the skill alignment program that we're undergoing with University Career Services. This is a field where you can pick from 139 skills in 7 categories that University Career Services has spoken to employers and determined to be key skills, things that employers are really looking for. Each supervisor is going to be putting in at least 3 of these, although they can put in as many as they want to. There's also several updates to the hiring email that comes out of JobX when you hire someone based specifically on supervisor requests. They say whether the job is for Carolina Works or Work Study, the hourly rate for the position, the total amount for the student, and there is a space on the form you use to generate that email where you can carbon copy that information to your HR officer or shared services center, which means there's no more back and forth between you and HR about trying to get these positions set up. You just copy them on that email and they have all the information they need to. The last bullet point on here is new tools. We are building a lot of new cool things for you based on supervisor requests. For example, the time record log, which supervisors use in conjunction with Tim to track their students' earnings, now works in both hours and dollars. And I ran out of space here, but it also has been constructed to accommodate up to 10 students in the same position and provides warnings when that student gets close to or exceeds their awards, because we're trying to prevent students from exceeding their awards, as you've heard from other presentations. There's a new program calendar. It actually just got posted today that has all of the important deadlines to help you find training opportunities, workshops, first day of hires, last day of hires, opportunities that you may not know exist, like allowing students to work on certain days, those sorts of things. You can find all that in one convenient location, at the bottom of the supervisor resources page. We're also trying to do more shorter topic-based online trainings. For example, this training, we divided the annual update into 3 parts so that you can get to just the information you need to. And finally, there is going to be some new tools and new training over terminations. We actually only had 4 students in 2017-18 dismissed for performance issues, so we knew that we had a very low rate there in previous years. Didn't feel like there was a lot needed for that sort of termination, but what we did find is the number of students who've been terminated because they are graduating, they're going on study abroad, they're taking a semester off, or they're simply moving to a new positions is, well, much higher than 4. So there's going to be a new form to make it easy on supervisors to request a termination action to be done in JobX, and we're going to be providing training on both how to utilize that form and how to have conversations with students about maybe preventing behaviors. So those 4 students who were let go because their performance wasn't great, providing you with tools to help redirect those students to an even better performance. All right, policy changes. A few very welcome changes to the federal regs and institutional regs surrounding the program. Number 1 is the student training quiz. Students, just like supervisors, go through a training on Sakai to ensure that they have read through their program requirements and will be operating under those regulations. The quiz isn't new. We started that last year, but what is new is there's no longer an associated form with it. Students simply just need to complete that quiz and send their supervisor proof that they made 100% grade on it, either by printing out the screen and providing it to their supervisor or just sending them an email screenshot. So cutting that workload in half. The second one is a training quiz for supervisors. Was a new concept for 18-19. It's out there now. It's 15 true-false questions. It's pretty easy and is mainly serving to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to see the updates to the system, the new programs, things that didn't exist last year or things that were missed last year that supervisors really should be aware of. We have informally required supervisors to do evaluations with their students in previous years as part of program regs, but we've never really sat down and set a common date or a common form, provided programming around it, provided training. So we're doing better on that. For 17-18, we created a form, put it out there for pilot studies, and it was well received. So we have a even improved version of that form for 18-19 that we will require supervisors to complete with all students at the end of each semester, and then optionally at midpoints halfway through the semester for feedback and improvement. There'll be a whole new training section on that on the Work Study Supervisor website in the fall. The next point is the 80% cap rule, which some of you probably haven't heard of, but the rule that we set on an institution, in previous years was if you're hiring a new student, whatever their wage tier is, they're capped at 80% of that maximum. So for example, if the wage tier was between $9 and $10, a new student couldn't make more than $9.80. We have since removed that. We found that it was not applicable, and it was not in keeping with the best interest of the program and the student, so that is gone. From 18-19 forward, if you are hiring a student inside a wage tier, you can provide them with a wage at any point in that tier that you feel is appropriate. We also, on the next point, working over holiday break, reevaluated our policy on that front, and we are happy to report that for students who are enrolled at UNC for fall and spring and who have been hired into a job for fall and spring, students no longer have to stop working at the end of finals. This is a big change for us from the previous year. Previously, we only allowed students to work between the first day of classes and the last day of finals. And now we're saying if your student's going to be a student for the whole academic year and employed for the whole academic year, we're going to count that holiday break between the fall and spring semesters as part of the academic year, and they can keep working. Please note, the student still has to be on board with working over the holiday break. You can't keep them from going home over the break, but if they're going to be in the area for some or all of that break and would like to keep working, and a registered supervisor will be here, they are certainly allowed to have the students continue to work. The last policy change on here is we're updating our deadlines, our procedures. This happens annually, but this is a good point to display them. The first one is actually something that hasn't really changed from previous years, is the June 30th priority submission date for fall. We do require that all supervisors have their jobs submitted by June 30th. Now, we won't turn you away if you submit after this date, but you will miss out on two very key things. The first is that your job is not guaranteed to be posted on August 1st when students gain access to the system. And we know from survey data that students really hit the search process hard and heavy at the beginning of August. So you are doing yourself a disservice and missing out on a lot of great candidates by not having your job ready on August 1st. The other item is, if you don't have your job submitted by June 30th, is you are not going to be eligible to take part of the early hire program. which means that if you're rehiring a student and would like to do so on July 30th or 31st ahead of the August 1 opening of the program to all students to sort of make it a little easier on yourself and potentially the students, if the job's not in by June 30th, we cannot allow you to participate in that program. So please, please, please do what you can to get your job submitted by June 30th so we can make sure that they are ready to go for your early rehire program and the August 1st program opening. Second deadline, this is a derivation from last year. August 20th is going to be the last day to submit jobs or update jobs for fall or fall-spring postings. This is a few days earlier than last year. Our plan is to try and to do more with the students in terms of helping them find positions, apply to positions, develop better quality materials for their applications. And we're just not able to do this at the end of August because we've had so many people submitting their jobs last minute and we've been unable to focus on the students. So this year we're taking a slightly different tact. We're encouraging you as supervisors to get everything in much earlier, and that frees us up to help with the students in the mid to late August and help those students who may not find a work study position to find a great quality position then. The other deadline on here, this one is actually carrying it over. Last year was the first year we did this, but we're going to keep it around this year. We will allow supervisors to post jobs for the spring term up through February 28th. So if at any point towards the end of the fall semester or the beginning of the spring semester you decide that you need to create a new spring-only posting, you have until February 28th to do so. After that point, we will not be accepting any more job updates. All right, those are sort of the what has happened and what is happening this year. I'd like to draw your attention to a new topic. For a lot of people, this is something that came up in the annual survey the annual presentation that they wanted to talk more about. And that is that UNC is moving to a wage sharing model. So starting with the 18-19 academic year, the Office of Scholarships and Student Aid, the Office for Undergraduate Admissions, and our off-campus community service partners are going to be piloting a wage sharing program under which employers will contribute 15% of a student's earnings. Now we're going to roll this program out. I'll talk a little bit more about how that's going to affect on-campus partners in the next year, but for 18-19 it is limited to just OSSA, undergrad admissions, and off-campus partners. The wage sharing model is actually something that virtually all of our peers are doing. It is a national best practice, and this decision was motivated by the provost office in conversations with the directors of scholarships and student aid and admissions to try and help with what dwindling resources is a nice way to put it, essentially to keep the program afloat despite not having as much funding and trying to help more people. Let's talk a little bit more about that. So I'd like to show you some of the biggest contributing factors we have behind the wage match decision. The first and perhaps the biggest is a decrease in federal and state funding. I know federal and state funding has been going down for the entire campus for a while, but it has especially been dropping rapidly for federal and state financial aid sources. I'll show you some numbers in just a second on this slide about that to illustrate this point. The second one is that we've seen a lot more students interested in the work study program, a lot more students moving into positions, and a higher average hourly rate. As the quality of the positions have gone up, we've seen wages increase, and as the program has been more and more successful and helped more people, we've seen more people interested in it. The third point here is we've seen a lot more supervisors want to join the program and create more positions. So what all three of these factors have led to is the program has grown in terms of the number of positions and the number of students and the amount of money that we're spending to keep those positions open and pay those students. And despite that, the resources from the federal and state sources are going down. Let me show you a chart. This is a pie graph of the funding sources for 17-18, and you'll note federal government's about a third, states about 7%, the institutional funding is 59%, big number, but there's also this little note next to the asterisk below it. And what this says is whatever we spend in the federal work study program, after the federal money and the state money is gone, 100% of what's left over in our funding comes directly out of institutional sources. So in other words, whatever the program does in terms of growth, we're not getting more resources from the federal and state government. We're having to cover that out of institutional funding, and that institutional funding really isn't growing either. It's actually kind of decreasing as well. So if you look at 17-18 and the institutional share, despite having less money to pay for these programs with, our institutional share this year was 59%, and last year only 51%. So it's jumped 8%. The federal share of this program, look, 34 to 39%. Last year we had a lot more money. The federal government supported nearly 40% of this program, and this year the state's only covering about 7%. Last year they held a full 10% of our budget was provided by the state. So a lot of problems here in trying to keep afloat despite increasing funding and a growing program. Let me put these numbers to you in a different way instead of in a chart. Here's 16-17 and 17-18. As of the time I'm recording this presentation, which is very early June, the numbers with the asterisks aren't fully finalized. They will be very, very close to this number, but I don't want to give you wrong data. Read across to the number on the right. The total program expenditure is up nearly 12%. Year over year. Last year it was about 10%, so steady trends there. We're growing somewhere between 10 and 12% each of the last 2 years, but the federal and state funding, as you can see, dropping over 3% this year. Last year was about the same. And the institutional payout, as a result of these two factors, the institution is funding an additional 26% of the program. It is skyrocketing the share of the federal work study program that is getting paid out of institutional coffers, and it's just not something we can support long term, especially if we want to continue to grow the program, or at least to continue to offer the program to the same number of students who have been participating. So we have a few options. In any situation we could do a number of things. We could do nothing. The program would run a deficit and we would go insolvent and we'd have to end it. Not great. We can raise external funds, which we are definitely trying to do. Those of you who participated in the site visits to this program know that we are collecting information and reaching out to donors, trying to get more money here. We were successful in one case, that's why we have Carolina Works, but we still have not had big enough gifts to the institutional funding to keep work study going at the rate we want to. We could decrease the program size. We could restrict the number of positions, which means basically less students and supervisors would get to make it into the program. It would be more competitive. We would turn people away. We could stop subsidizing the positions entirely. We could just spend the federal and state allotments in the minimal institution to meet those matching results, which probably would result in a lot of supervisors leaving entirely. We don't want that. So what we've decided on is this sixth option, which is, again, a national best practice and what the vast majority of programs in this country do, and virtually all of our peers, which is to share the actual cost of the program with the employers. So let's look at what that would mean for you as supervisors. Sharing the cost. Here we go. So in effect, what we have been doing as a program is subsidizing 100% of the wages of students that have been employed in other departments. So what we're looking to change is that subsidization rate. So in 18-19, the federal work study program for most people on campus is going to stay 100% subsidized. For our off-campus teaching and tutoring programs, this is mainly America Counts and America Reads, we'll continue funding those positions at 100% because we get special dispensation from the federal government that allows us to do that. For the Office of Undergraduate Admissions and the Office of Scholarships and Student Aid, we will be voluntarily piloting a wage match in 18-19 at a 15% rate, which means the positions are still 85% subsidized. And for our off-campus community service partners, we'll be asking them to do the same thing we do. They'll still receive an 85% subsidization and be requested to provide a 15% match share on what the employee earns. So if the employee earns $100, the share for admissions, OSSA, and our off-campus services is a $15 share. Now, for Carolina Works, because it was instituted as a different program with different restrictions, including the need to do an employer match, it is a 50% subsidized rate. On campus, off campus, if we had a third option, it would still be 50% for everybody. We don't anticipate Carolina Works changing, but for the federal work study program in 1920, what we believe is going to happen, not finalized, but what we're planning on, is everyone on campus will be providing a 15% share, which means these positions are still 85% subsidized. But all of our on-campus partners will move into the program that we're piloting this year with a select few, and they'll be at a 15% wage match. Off-campus community service partners are already at 15%. They'll stay at 15% for 1920. And again, our off-campus teaching tutoring will stay at 100% because of the special permissions with the federal government. And then Carolina Works, no change there. They were at 50% for 1819. They'll be at 50% for 1920, and likely on into the future in perpetuity based on the funding levels we have. One thing I like to point out here is just because you participate in the program in 1819 does not mean that you are required to participate in the program in 1920. Now, we would love for everybody to stick around as we move sort of into this new chapter, new financial model, new program, because the more people who help, the less we need in terms of employer matches to make everything work out. But we are not going to require you to sign a 2-year contract. We're not going to make you stay as part of the program. We're not going to list your jobs for you. If you decide that you're unable to participate in the wage match, you are welcome to exit the program. We'll miss you. We don't want you to do that, but we're not going to force you to stay around. If you do stick around, here's what you're looking at. At an 85% subsidization for our off-campus community service partners, OSSA and admissions this year, and for virtually everyone next year, on average, a student earns $1,753.05, which means your 15% share of that earnings for the average student is $263. In other words, to keep an employee through the work-study program with you for the full year, less than $270 on average. Now, the maximum, if you're planning things out for budgetary reasons, would be $450, provided that student is a covenant student, which means they have a $3,000 award and they earn the full amount of that award. Please note these figures don't include overages, so if you do allow the student to work over or you roll them from work-study programs into departmental funding, it would be on top of these numbers. The next chart below, the 50% subsidization, so this is if you are hiring for Carolina Works. 50% subsidy, 50% employer match. On average, that's going to be $876.52 for a student that you would pay out in terms of wage matches, excuse me. And if you are looking for the absolute most that you would possibly the absolute most you would possibly pay in terms of an employer wage match for that student would be $1,500. So again, for a 15% wage match on work-study programs, between $263 and $450 on average to maximum, and for Carolina Works, average to maximum is $876 to $1,500. All right, that's all I have this year. That will conclude part 3 of our annual update. Of course, if you have any questions about this material, any questions about any other topics, please feel free to email Thomas and myself. Our email's right there, work-study@unc.edu. We would love to hear from you if you have questions or suggestions about how to make the program better, especially. We'd also invite you to check out that supervisor resources site we talked about. You can go to the URL listed there or simply Google UNC Work Study and click on the big gray link in the middle of the page to get to the Work Study Supervisor site and all of the resources contained within. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and possibly the series, and we hope that you will continue to be a part of the Work Study program, be a part of the new Carolina Works programs, our new initiatives in RISE, Carolina Works, Skill Alignment Program, and Early Rehire, and continue to send us your great ideas about how to make the program better. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.